Yeah, so I can go into that story if you like about the events of that night, and talk about that if you want. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
So I rock up to this youth group, typical youth group, like a bunch of smelly teenagers playing basketball at the front, and then we go in for a praise and worship session and stuff, and I'm sitting at the back of the hall, and everyone at the end of the preach and end of the praise and worship preach and stuff, there's about probably about 50 or 60 people in the youth hall at this time, and most of them are up the front and they're praying for each other and they're crying and it's very spiritual-esque moment. The band sounded like crap. No one seemed to care. And I'm sitting there feeling very uncomfortable and very like I'm not ready to. I remember saying to God, I remember saying like, "Look, I'm not ready for this life. I'll commit my life to you when I'm old and I'm married and I've got everything sorted. I'm still young. I still want to live my life and stuff." And I remember looking outside, ready to like leave the room, and there was a friend of mine who I hadn't seen since she left our school outside, and I knew she was very, very Christian, and she was looking through the windows because there was a kids thing going on that she was helping out with. And I knew if I go outside, she'd start asking questions like, "Oh, what are you doing here?" Like, blah, blah. And I was like, "Oh no!" So I just buried my head in my hands like this, and I was just pretending not to be there. And some people asked me, "Do you want to go up the front for prayer?" And I said, "Nope." I was like, "Nope, don't want to do that." And then eventually, as I had my head in my hands, I felt all these people just chuck their hands on my back. And there were these people who didn't know me who were saying things like, "I know that you feel X, Y, Z, but God wants you to know A, B, C." Like it was just answering the questions, like, and it was like a very, very like powerful thing. And it's hard not to feel emotional when these strangers step out, these teenagers step out in faith to pray for you. So they did. And I started feeling this sense of like overwhelming like emotion, and I looked down in a puddle of tears, and I just felt it was kind of shocking. It was like this. It was kind of it's like I felt drunk, like intoxicated, like I was crying. I felt elated. I felt for a whole weekend. I felt just not all there. Like I felt like a shift. Um, and I noticed that when someone would mention like my ex-girlfriend's name, who I had a deep like didn't like very much, I realized I didn't hate her anymore. And I was like, wow, I don't hate that person anymore. I remember all these things were happening. And I came to school on the Monday, and one of my friends said, "Oh, I heard you became a Christian over the weekend." And I was like, "No, well, no, I didn't." And they're like, "Yeah, you did. You got saved." And I was just like, "What?" And then I was like, "Oh." And then I didn't even click at that time. I was like, "Yeah, no, I did. I did become a Christian." And I like fought back by going, "Yeah, no, I am a Christian. I'm like a hardcore Christian." And yeah, so then that's how I basically, and then I got more and more involved in the church. A few weeks after that, there was a youth camp, and in that youth camp, there was just crazy weird people speaking in tongues and people falling over. I saw one of my friends from school who was a very new Christian just wake up from passing out after being prayed for. I remember we were praying for this one of my friends, that girl that was standing outside of the youth hall. She was blind in one eye, and we were praying for her eyes, and her eyes went dark. We're like, "This is it. That's happening." And her eye never got healed, but yeah, it was a wild time, definitely. And I remember looking at a convulsing. This is going to sound whack to people who have never seen this stuff, but I was seeing a friend of mine who's convulsing on the floor, digging his hand, like digging with his feet into the floor as he's like after he's been prayed for, and he can't stop shaking. We had to pick him up, and he can't stop shaking and speaking in tongues and praying, and like he was just kind of catatonic. And we're all just having a laugh, like watching him, like all just like because he's just in the spirit after a baptism, and he's like a blubbering mess. And then we bring him into we carry him up to the youth hall, the youth camp area, and his and I remember just thinking to myself, I can never deny this. I can never deny what I'm seeing here. Like I'm seeing something that is so profound that I cannot deny what I'm seeing. And so that I just bought into the church hook, line, and sinker. Everyone started calling me Captain Christian at school because I was yeah.
in philosophy, you have philosophers going back to like William James, who said that the um, foundational basis of religious belief is experience.
Hmm.
That the religious experience plays, that if you were to like ask every single religious person in the world that was, we're talking about like people who actively practice the religion, like what makes you believe so strongly in this, I think it's a safe bet to say that most of them would describe some sort of spiritual experience that they've had, which you described. So we have that. And on the other hand, you have this kind of like intellectual curiosity that you've expressed, the desire to seek, know, and understand the truth. How do, I guess the big question is, like, if that experience is so profound, how do you talk or reason yourself out of that? Like,
Mm.
how did that happen? Was it like a small, like you started investigating one thing and kind of pull apart the tapestry, or was it like this big like moment of revelation? And what
Yeah,
was it?
it's actually a really interesting thing because my stepmom was really into Eastern religions when I was going to youth group. I used to bring friends around, they'd see the Buddhas, and they would go around the house and then go, "Oh, how do you live here? Like, do you pray over them and stuff?" And she was very into Eastern religions, and I'm not sure what type of Eastern experience she had, but she went to some like class. I forgot what it was, but she was essentially learning some sort of spiritual practice. And I think they were praying about something in Tibet, or they were doing something. I can't really remember. But they had this experience where they all fell over laughing, and they were delirious and blessing each other and doing all these things in this room. And she came and described to me, and it sounded exactly like the experience that I was seeing and experiencing at youth group. Um, and that always played on my mind. I think maybe at the time I was like, "Oh, wow, those demons are getting crafty or whatever." Like, would have just, I'm not sure what I thought, but I would have just thought, like, "Oh, wow, like this is obviously." But the thing that I noticed was that other religions have experiences, like different experiences. And my wife said that she used to experience things in church all the time, and then when she'd go to a musical to see The Wicked or The Book of Mormon or something on in Brisbane, see a musical, she would have those same feelings, the exact same feelings.
Mm,
Or I mean, it's hard to deny that other cultures and people have these experiences. I remember going to Japan and seeing there were two events. We went on this world trip, Amy and I. We wanted to explore the world. We'd never been out, and I was standing outside of a temple in Osaka in Tokyo,
mm,
and there were people blowing incense on their face as a part of the ceremony to cleanse yourself before you go in. Now, tourists did this. We might have even done this as like a little goof. Everyone kind of did it before they went to the temple as a purifying thing. And I thought to myself, are they really being purified? Because I still believe in the spirit realm at the time and stuff. I go, are they really being purified? Or is it
mm,
just something that they're doing? And if they weren't being purified, if you could demonstrate factually that they were not being purified, would that even matter? Would the tradition probably wouldn't even change. They'd probably just continue the tradition. And I was like, regardless of its validity, they're still going to probably choose to do it, right? And it's part of a tradition. And I was like, okay, that's a little different. Skip forward a few weeks, we're in Scotland. We're traveling the Isle of Skye. Our tour bus driver talks about how there's a fairy cave. We went up to this fairy cave, and apparently some people actually do see fairies there and stuff. And
mhm,
this is what we've been told. And fairies are a big part of Scottish culture, Celtic culture. And this one, we told this story about this American girl who came in and she felt something grab her leg, came into the cave and felt something grab her leg, and she ran down the bus. She was scared. That
mm,
night, she woke up to this thing standing in the corner of the room, and it
mm,
jumped on top of her chest and stuff. And she stood up all night. She was freaking out. They like the guy saw this stuff firsthand and saw her freaking out and seeing these things. And anyway, a year later, she came back to Scotland to do the tour again to try and get rid of this fairy because this fairy thing came with her back to the United States. and she wanted to try and leave it there. And they haven't heard from her since, but who knows how the story ended. But I remember thinking to myself when he told the story, classic demon, right? I was like, classic demon. It's there to. And then I thought to myself, hang on, if this lady was sleeping and she woke up and saw this fairy and it sat on her chest, what if she just went, okay, and then like rolled over and went back to, like, what if she didn't care? And I was like, all the whole power of this thing was to induce fear. And then I was like, but if you don't care about the fear, and this is what I learned going through psychology, if you don't pay it any attention, it goes away. And then I was like, so why, if she didn't care about it, it would probably disappear. So why is a tool of psychology working on this fairy or demon? And then I was like, hang on, is it even a demon? I was like, the demons in the Bible like kicked people's asses. They like beat them up. They like, threw them out of the house naked.
Yeah.
They like, or they went into a flock of pigs and the pigs fell down, or like, like this is, I was like, and how do you determine the difference between mental illness and a spiritual attack? And I was like, and how can the tools of psychology help people? So those things really broke that, not to break, but really drew a big crack in the earthworks of like, okay, I'm not denying the spiritual experiences I had, or the experiences that I did have, speaking in tongues, feeling elated, praying for people and falling over and passing out, things like that. I'm not denying any of that. I'm just not attaching a truth claim to that, right? Like when young teenagers would see the Beatles and pass out, it wasn't because the Beatles had like some aura about them or something, or like spiritual goblins were pushing them over. It was literally because they were shocked and amazed, or I don't know what it was, but there's probably a natural explanation for that. But if that was the Pope, that would be seen as spiritual. If it was a witch doctor, that would be seen as spiritual. So for me, I can't necessarily describe the experiences that I've had in church and the things that I've seen. But nor can I add a truth claim to it, because if I was to do that, I'd have to accept a lot of other claims from other religions or spiritual experiences.